Hey everybody, it's Monday. It's Always Bookin Comedy. I'm Mark Masters. We got Matt Owens. I'm so excited about tonight's conversation. Matt is I don't know a ton about Matt, but what I do know is actually I'll say this. Every time I've seen him, he's been wearing that shirt.
It's my
Big
go-to. I have
Saints
four of
fan
them.
is what
I
I
have
know
four of
about
them.
Matt right
Yeah,
now. And joining us from New Orleans. How perfect is
that's
that,
right.
right?
I'm
Is that
home in New
correct?
Orleans. Yes, I'm in New Orleans right now.
Awesome.
Leave in the
Awesome.
morning, but here today, so that's good.
Okay. Matt does some cool stuff with a very big comedian. We might get into that in a little bit. But let's talk about you. You are well known. I had a number of comedians I've worked with vouch for you as somebody. They referenced you as somebody that ran shows for them. So why don't you just get into your kind of show running pedigree? You do a lot in the New Orleans area, it seems like.
Yeah, yes. No, so I got very lucky. I opened up for a pretty big name comic at the Joy Theater in New Orleans, which is a really nice sized theater right on Canal Street, downtown New Orleans, just outside the French Quarter. And the owners of that theater were in attendance the night that I performed. They heard that I was local, and so they asked me after the show. They said, "Oh, you live here, right?" And I said, "I do." And they said, "Would you like to have your own show here at the Joy?" And I said, "I would love to. That would be amazing." And so the first one I headlined, I was very lucky. I had a lot of press at the time, and I was very lucky it sold out. So they were like, "Oh, this is huge. We're going to do this again and again and again." So they wanted me to do this show every month, and I was like, "Well, I just knew that selling out this theater every month was going to be pretty difficult, especially if we didn't have, you know." The first, I told them, let's trim it down. Let's do 4 a year. We'll do seasonally,
Mhm.
spring, summer, winter, fall, winter. We'll do it like that, and we'll just have 4 shows a year. And I'll headline the first one and the last one, but then the two in the middle will bring national touring headliners down and have them headline, because I just don't think that a local comedy showcase is going to have enough oomph to sell out this many seats in this
Right.
theater. So that kind of started this sort of coordinating local comedians and also trying to attract bigger names to the region. And so that kind of started. I started this small little company called Stand Up NOLA, and then we were also producing shows at a local venue called the Howlin' Wolf.
Okay, I've heard of it.
All this was happening around 2012, 2013, 2014. And then we consistently, Howlin' Wolf pretty luckily has 2 shows a week, two
Whoa.
booked comedy shows on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And they're pretty standard showcase shows that happen in the city every week. And then over the years, some big names would kind of drop in. There were some big drop-ins: Hannibal Buress, Bill Burr, Louis C.K. They would drop in at this Tuesday night show. It was really popular. So it would get all this attendance because you never know who might show up. Well, the film industry was really booming in New Orleans at that time, so it was pretty. You could kind of bet on some of these big names that were here filming something would pop in, but that kind of dwindled, and a lot of the filming moved to Atlanta,
Hmm.
and the latter part of the late teens of 2018, 2019. And so
Mhm.
we continued to sort of morph, and then the general manager of the Wolf, and I teamed up, and we started a company called Laugh Life Comedy, where we started, rather than just do a stand-up NOLA, which had NOLA, New Orleans, Louisiana, in the name. We wanted to do something more regionally. So we were looking at routing comics from Atlanta to Austin or Houston to Jacksonville, or trying to get comics who were coming through some of these major markets that we could maybe make a few nights for them on the way. Or if we could have like an anchor, like New Orleans show be the anchor show, and then we could get them one nighters in the smaller markets in the regions, like Mobile, Alabama, Pensacola, Florida, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, Lafayette, Louisiana, Lake Charles, Louisiana. So we could kind of catch them going east or west and try to route them so that they could have one night in a major market and then multiple nights, so that we could, maybe get them excited about coming to the area and not just doing one show, get more than one show out of it.
Right.
New Orleans is tricky because it's kind of a huge gap between smaller theaters and the big theaters that
How big was that Joy Theater that you were talking about?
It's 656 seated, so
Good
not
Lord, that's a lot of tickets to sell.
It is, and well, I mean, some people can sell it out by just announcing it. Hannibal Buress used to sell it out by saying he was in town on Twitter, and he could sell it out within an hour. Me, on the other hand, I have the morning shows, radio shows, press, print, internet, everything, trying to get people to come out. But I think depending on who's on it and what's going on, you could do it. But New Orleans is also a very tricky city to sort of you can't just come in here and expect a sellout show. Because the entertainment dollar there's a lot of competition in New Orleans. There's a ton of entertainment going on. We have two major sports teams. We have the Pelicans and the Saints. We have also the South is, traditionally just completely engrossed in college football. So, if you have a Saturday night show somewhere and LSU's playing Alabama, you're going to struggle to get attendance, So there's all these little variables. Also, they have the most incredible musicians on the planet playing for free in the French Quarter any night of the week. So you have to be a little more strategic than just announcing the show and expecting it to do well. Even some of the bigger names, sometimes struggle here. It's kind of a known thing that big, even really big names will struggle compared to other markets. How quickly they sell out. It takes a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. So what ended up happening with the Joy Theater? You still run
no. I did that from let's say 2014, 16, 17, probably up to 2018. But then the owners of the building sold the building, and then the new owners gave the lease of the space to AEG. So AEG was pretty much had the back in the day. I could say, hey, I would send available dates and say, what about this weekend? They'd say, okay, great. And now everything had to run up the flagpole with AEG, and also they wanted to have a lot more decision making over who, mostly because they were working with agents to route their certain artists into the region. So I couldn't just call Mark Norman or Sean Patton and say, hey, do you want to do a show here? It had to go all through go through AEG. So it kind of lost its luster. But I was still able to do some shows there even when AEG took it over. It was just a lot more difficult. Took a lot more pre-planning and a lot more really forecasting on the schedule. And then also some of the other smaller venues could still seat 400 in some of these smaller venues. And so I also had a lot more autonomy. I could say, I could, shoot out a date of availability. I could talk to the artist directly. I could, have a lot more control over the show. And with a 400 seat cap, I could still we would see if we sell one out, great. Then we'll add a second show, But if we only get to 400, another thing I love about the Howlin' Wolf is it's scalable. It has a 50 seat room, 100 seat room, and a 400 seat room.
Huh.
So, if somebody's not selling
and you're not locked into one of them ahead of time?
No, because usually what we do is look at the calendar and try to make sure that there's nothing, they can double dip. Some nights they can have a late show. They can do a late band. They can have a band go on at 10 or 11. But we get dibs on the 7 p.m., 8 p.m. slot. And so we could kind of, if the artist isn't selling really well, which sometimes happens, we can scale down to the 100 seat room and it would feel great because we can make it look like, a 100 seat room sold out is great. A 400 seat room with 100 people in it feels like a bummer. Yeah. Exactly. So we can scale it,
Nice. Are any of those three rooms better or worse for comedy, and why? Assuming they're mostly full.
So the 50 seat room is a box. It's, it reminds me of like a black box theater. It's, a simple stage, simple black curtain across the back, it's a box, there's not much to it. The lighting in there, you can, when it's packed and we had Adrienne Appalucci there, and she's
popping off right now.
Yeah. We had her in there, and we basically we sold tables, so it has the option to do table seating and GA or all GA. And so we did a combination of table seats plus GA seats, and that it was packed and everybody was crammed in. It felt like a nice underground New York comedy club. And man, that night it was on fire because I think we had right at 50 people in there, and it was just incredible because everything was kind of crammed in. We pushed the tables right up against the stage, that we had everybody kind of packed in there. And so
how big was the ticket difference between a table and a GA?
So we usually do like a GA would be like a $25 ticket, sometimes 20, 22, depending on the artist. We've gone as low as 15, depending. And then the upsell is usually like around $35 per head for a table. So it would be a $70 for a 2-top, or 4-top would be 4 times 35. So you can get a 35 times 4. Okay.
140.
Yeah, about $140 for a 4-top table. Yeah. But you get in early. You get there's a drink special that you have access to, and there's also early seating, so you can get into the venue before doors.
That's funny. I've never thought of that. That is a great idea, because that's such a problem with comedy show producing, is people showing up late. And you always want them to show up early. It's like a game of deception. Like, people are constantly lying about when the show starts. Same thing with rock concerts.
You lie and say it's going to start at 8 when really you're planning on starting at 8:30.
But that's a nice way of handling that. Just saying, like, the first 30 minutes, drinks are half price or whatever. If you could get that from the venue, what a cool idea. I love that, Matt.
Yeah, and we also make it like a perk. So like, you're allowed access to come in and get your table before we let everybody in. And it's not necessarily, it's really about exactly what you said. It's trying to get the front seats, the front tables that are close to the stage full first.
Yes.
Because you don't want the show to start and then there's 4-tops, wiggling their way through the crowd trying to get up front,
Right.
So we do make it like a little happy hour sort of perk. Come early, get drinks.
So that's the box room. Then what are the other 2 rooms like?
The next room is what we call the porch. It has I co-produced Heart of the City with Kevin Hart there.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember that show on Comedy Central where Kevin Hart would go into sort of smaller markets, except for not New York or LA, go into like Atlanta or the South, some of these other smaller markets. They did a New Orleans version.
Okay.
And so
did it air on Comedy Central, or was it on online thing? That's cool.
It was on Comedy. So it was great. But we shot that on the stage that we call the porch, and it literally looks like the backdrop of this is actually the wall of the green room is actually a porch. It has windows and shutters and looks like an overhang. It looks like a New Orleans porch.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what the set design was designed. There's the main stage of the Howlin' Wolf has these 2 porches on stage right and left, and then has this huge mural in the middle. And the idea is, if you're looking at the stage, it looks like you're walked into a house, and then there's these stages on these 2 set pieces on either side of the stage. But we have a stage in front of the stage left porch that's kind of like a straight shot. So it's built this beautiful porch with really cool lighting, and also it looks like this looks like somebody's in the house, so there's lights inside. And then the porch comes right off of it into the audience. And then that's about 100-seater. That's a straight shot.
Huh. That's cool. Hey, just a quick comment from a viewer in North Carolina about like perks to get people in early. The South Comedy Works, I can verify this. If you eat at their restaurant upstairs before the show, you get early access to preferred seating, which is up close, which is a funny thing as well. Since we're amongst friends here, like, producers consider the front preferred seating and sell it as preferred seating, but often customers
don't want to sit up there at all.
Preferred seating.
Yeah, I don't want to sit anywhere near the stage. I actually had somebody
on a pig. You just label it VIP seating, and then hopefully people will go for it.
I had this guest that paid for this VIP preferred table. And then when they got there, they said, can we sit in the back? And I was like, you can, but that's what you paid for. And they said, we don't care. We don't want to sit anywhere close to the stage.
That
so
happens a lot.
It is a little bit of a juggling act. There's all this fear, especially at some acts you have to say, oh, I'm sorry, I will move you, because they probably are going to talk to you. But some acts don't want to have any interaction with the front table.
I do a lot of smaller shows, like 75 to 100 people. So it's not uncommon for me to tell a comic, hey, the lady in green, just don't talk to her. You know, I have this conversation as I'm seating the people. I'm like, don't worry about it. I'll just tell the comedians not to talk to you. Don't worry about it.
Right. Yeah.
We don't want them to be uncomfortable.
No, it's a bad experience. If your worst fear is to get messed with by the comic, and then that happens.
Yeah.
My favorite is of you coming back.
When it's like the husband and the wife, and the wife usually buys the tickets, and the wife bought the front row tickets, and then the husband's astonished, like, wait, you bought front row tickets? What are you? Then they have their little tiff. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a cool room, and that's a neat experience with the Kevin Hart thing. All right. What's the third room like?
The third room is the main stage. So this room is also scalable, but it has these sort of we have these massive curtains that can drop on either right or left. So we can raise the curtains and widen the room, or we can narrow the room out. So it can also kind of scale from 2, 3 to 4, depending. And then what we do is kind of they're not terribly high. They're higher than a preferred comedy room. They're a little bit taller, but yeah, it's kind of an A-frame building, so it kind of lofts up in the center. But really, where the audience is, and the stage is, the ceilings are relatively low, because it's actually A-framed in the direction of the stage. If that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to talk at all about your like what I know that you do with a big comic, or do you want?
I think it's probably wise to stick to the stand-up NOLA and laugh life stuff.
No problem. All right. Well, tell me more about. So you were talking about the history of your companies, and it reminded me of what the last company was that you mentioned when you got more regional.
So Laugh Life Comedy. I took the NOLA out of it so that we could produce stuff in the region without it being confusing.
And does that still exist today?
Oh yeah. Okay. We're pretty active. I mean, we're always booking stuff. We're slowly we're winding down our year. We've got a few more things on the calendar this year, and then we're ready to go for 2025. We've already got a lot of stuff on the books. It's pretty consistent. What we're doing.
Anybody surprise you with their ability to move tickets recently?
I'll tell you who sold out that I was really impressed by, and I wasn't shocked, but I was just really impressed. Casey Rocket sold out a ton of shows. We did he sold out 400 seats in New Orleans, and then 2 shows in Mobile.
Wow.
Back-to-back shows. So, I just was really impressed at that's a lot of tickets. We've had, I've had big, huge names, comics that their first time through the market didn't do anything close to that. Mark Norman just sold out the Wolf maybe 2 years ago. He's been around for a long time and had many comedy specials on Comedy Central and everything. And this was even after his he's jumped to the Orpheum now, but when he sold that out, it just wasn't that long ago to have that sold out there. And Rich Voss, it sold well here, but not like that. It's just really impressive to see. I know a lot of old, veterans of comedy who've been around forever. Mm-hmm. And, I would just assume, Mark, you probably share this with me. Like, I just assume that everybody knows a lot of these comics that you and I know well. Like, oh, everybody, this would be like a huge win if I was able to book this guy. This is going to be huge. Most of those my people I grew up on, and so I couldn't wait to have them. And then, somebody like Casey, who's, I would say, relatively new to comedy overall, especially touring. It was just really impressive. I met Casey back in Austin a couple years ago. We talked. I headlined the Creek and Cave. Are you familiar with that club?
Yeah, sure.
And he had a show. He was on a showcase show that followed the show I was doing. And And so after I got off stage, I was talking to a lot of the comics who were in the green room, and I met him. He's just such a nice guy, and I'm just really excited to see him doing so well. But it was really impressed,
So
very impressive.
I assume you know like why he sells so well. Do you want to explain that to people out there? He's got
Well,
a
I
bump
think,
of kind.
yeah. Well, I think that I think that Kill Tony is
Yeah.
huge reach, just
Yeah.
insane. Like you can't. It's bananas what a huge fan base that show has. And I also I think too, like, it's very clippable content. Obviously, the comics just do 1 minute, and then they have some stuff around it, But I think it's bite size, so that actually people would engage. I remember I taped just a small set, and this was years ago, probably around 2010, 11, something like that. I taped a set and I sent it to my friends. I think it was 15 minutes. I was like, "Hey, watch this." I couldn't get a single friend of mine to watch that thing in its entirety. so maybe I know that Kill Tony has the whole show, right?
Yeah.
However, I think it also the clippable sort of bite-sized things that are on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, YouTube and Facebook and all the social media stuff that you can just kind of get through it. You can watch a ton of Casey Rockett's. Yes, yeah, and I think also
surprises me a little bit about that is so that's popular because it's like low attention span. And I always wonder, are those people going to enjoy a 90-minute comedy show and will they buy tickets to it? You know what I'm saying? But they do.
So the thing is, so my concern too, because I worked with another artist who also is very TikTok, Instagram stuff, and I was my experience with that, I was on stage for that one, and my experience with that is they don't they don't really listen or pay attention. There's a lot of chaos in the theater. It's a lot of chaos in the room. They kind of are. I think that Casey, fortunately for him, he's kind of a comedian. He's very funny, and also it's all.
Did he do 60 minutes? I've never seen him perform more than I think I was very 10 or 15 once.
And I don't think he would mind me saying this. Like the first few times I saw him live the first time I ever met him, and it was on, at the Creek on a showcase show following mine. And so I was like, all right, let's see what's up. And like he did a set, but it wasn't a lengthy set. It was probably seven minutes, maybe 5. And it was mostly what you see on Kill Tony. It was that kind of stuff, So I felt the same way. I was thinking the same way you're thinking. I was like, so how is this going to play for 60 minutes if he's headlining the show? And we talked to him about his set time too. I said, so how much time are you going to do? I'll do 60, maybe a little more if it's going well. And I'm like, okay, all right. All right. I was very
scales up.
Yeah, I was very excited to see it, and I have to say I was very impressed. It was really funny top to bottom, and that energy. One of the things too, like there was a reluctancy to do multiple shows, even though he was selling out, because I believe we could have added a second show in New Orleans. But after seeing it, that's a hard thing to do twice. It requires a lot of his energy level is at 100%,
right?
And also I think too, there's the way he performs just requires a lot of mental agility. Like you have to be really in the game, in the zone to do it. So I was blown away.
So we got a couple great questions from North Carolina, and then I got a question after this. On the 400 seater that sold out, did Casey do anything like Facebook ads, flyers, promotion, etc. to draw like that?
It was mostly from his social media stuff, and it wasn't really ads. We didn't do a lot of social media ads. It was mostly from him promoting it on his social media, and it was pretty much just basic. Here's where I'm playing.
Yeah.
It wasn't a whole lot of paid ads on his part. I think we did one collaborative ad that again, wasn't an expensive, hard push. It was just and sort of in the beginning, right when we announced the show, to just kind of get it out there and get it kind of rolling.
Right.
But it sold out very quickly, and we were shocked.
Do you think that any of those attendees have become regular customers of your comedy show productions?
So one of the things I do, especially if I'm in town for the show, is I just scan the audience just to kind of see. I mean, obviously we were able to capture their information from the ticket sales. We have our own ticketing, so we get to capture all of that information. So we can see that they bought tickets before, and we try to track it. So we can see the analytics of these people are coming or they're buying off, and these people like this kind of comedy. So we do pay attention to that, but mostly I have a pretty good memory, and I really, study people as they're coming into the venue and everything, and trying to see like, all right, who are these people? And quite frankly, I didn't see a lot at the Casey Rocket that I have ever seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I've seen them since. So
Yeah.
I think that I think that it will translate to them, at least us being on their radar, and we do capture their email addresses when they buy the ticket, so we can send them e-blasts when we have a new ticket.
All right, another question from North Carolina here about Casey Rocket again. How much of his 60-minute set was material and how much was crowd work?
It's hard to describe what he does because it's not a whole lot of interaction with the crowd. So it's not saying that he won't address something that's going on, but he's on another train, so to speak. So it's kind of like improvised material that can go in any direction at any moment. So there's a little bit of framework, I guess, to the show, but it's not. He didn't do a lot of crowd work. If there was something that needed to be addressed or something that was funny in the moment, he would play around with it, but he wouldn't stay there for very long because it's sometimes what he was doing was a lot more engaging than boring interaction with an audience member.
Yeah. So here's my follow-up question to all this. So it sounds like those shows were financially successful. Does that make you motivated to headline more comics in the Kill Tony universe? And is that on the roadmap?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's it's kind of like they say for people who make movies at a high level, like you do one for the studio and then you do one for yourself. Like I have comics that I absolutely adore that probably struggle with selling a lot of tickets like that, And so I think it's kind of like, what's hot, what's trending. We definitely take a look at it. And also, I tell you, I've been pleasantly surprised. I was kind of a snob when I was like, oh, we're just gonna get these Kill Tony artists, whatever. They sell well, and quite frankly, they have the goods. They're not there. I was like, well, how is this gonna go well? And there's also these social media comics that have a ton of following that I'm like, and maybe just because they're not on my radar doesn't mean they don't really aren't doing something pretty remarkable and have a following for it, so I've loosened my judgment, my prejudgment of some of these artists because all I want is for audiences to have a great time, for the artists to do well, for the venue to have a good experience. I want everybody to have a good experience and a great show, and so I've let my opinions I push aside my own opinions.
Yeah. We only have a couple more minutes, unfortunately. I don't know. I have one specific question I want to ask, which is, you've seen some of my rooms, 50 to 100 seaters kind of things. I do runs. Who are some comics that I should have on my radar? Think about that for a second. And then another closing question. What's going to be new and exciting in 2025 for your production company and for you as a comedian? And what are you excited about as this year comes to a close?
This year, we have the opportunity to do comedy more. So we're going to do more. We're going to do more comedy consistently throughout the week. So instead of just having shows that are centered around booked artists, we're going to really hammer shows 5 nights a week.
Oh, wow. At that Howling venue?
Yeah. Yes, because we've proven that we can do well in the venue, and so the owner of the venue has given us a lot more autonomy over what we can do there, and we just want to grow it. Another thing too, there's no real comedy club in New Orleans, and it's just difficult. So one of the reason why I think this is a tough market is because there's no consistent comedy every night of the week, happening, where you have comics coming and doing shows and hanging out and producing shows and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to really open this up and be a lot more aggressive with having programming every, 5 nights a week at minimum.
Like Wednesday through Sunday?
Yeah, more. We're going to do a show Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday or Saturday, depending on, we
They'll have
might
a
take.
music thing.
Yeah, we might take Saturday. It might be Saturday, Monday, probably, but would be the nights we would be dark. But the rest of the week, we're definitely going to do more. We just Laugh Life just got. We passed the roast battle league to get into the official roast battle with out of LA. So we're now an official roast battle city. So New Orleans will be on that sort of that bracketing tiered as a competitor.
Yep.
So the artists that do well here can compete in LA at the national level. And so we did a whole season of that should come out. And also we're going to, try to do that really consistently here in the next year.
Awesome. And in comics that should be on my radar?
Yeah, I tell you what, I'll just share with you my the Laugh Life. You should follow it at Laugh Life Comedy.
Oh, okay. I can scroll back through.
Yeah. Anybody we've had, I would recommend, because I think that they're similar in scope. Like
I'm going to pull it up right now in real time. Laugh Life Comedy. See how well I can type. Okay, here we go. Anthony DeVito, Shane Torres. Shane's been recommended to me. Casey Rocket, Lucas Zelnick, Chad and JT Live. I worked with JT, I think, or Chad, I forget which one, in Malibu, California recently. Lucas Zelnick again. Jeffrey Asmus, I've worked with him. Who's Jay Gomez?
Jeffrey's great. Jeffrey's so well.
He's so funny, and he sells well too. He's actually too big for me now, I would say. I would say in general, these are bigger names than I tend to get. Dave Williamson, I've talked to him a few times. Mike Kaplan, I've talked to him. All right, let's see. Francis Ellis, we've talked but never done anything. I have a funny Francis Ellis story we can close out on. He was on a chairlift in Vail, Colorado, the same day we had a show in Vail, and somebody told him he was going to a comedy show, and he was like, really? Who's running a comedy show tonight? And somehow he got my number and texted me. And
went on.
Well, like we have comics who like travel. Like I'm working with a venue problem right now, and I have a comic flying in from LA just to feature on a show. And the show just got canceled today. The stress of a producer. I got to find a new home for it, whatever. Anyways, a long story short, we don't have a lot of wiggle room on our shows because people are like traveling a long way and our lineup's already full. So I said, hey man, I'd love to get you up. And I didn't know who he was, by the way, really. And I offered him a 5-minute spot. And he told me, I haven't done a 5-minute spot in 15 years. I'm going to stay at home. And so like I basically kind of pissed him off, I think. And so I was fine. And then like 6 months later, I'm in New York City. I go to this at the Stand. They had a Netflix competition taping thing for the first year of Netflix as a joke. And it was like a everybody was doing 5 minutes. And sure enough, Francis Ellis, right in the middle of the lineup, I texted him afterwards. I just said, in a direct response to his latest text.
You just did 5.
I don't do 5. And I just said, hey man, loved your 5-minute set at the Stand tonight.
Well, I guess he's a great comic.
Yeah. He was super funny. That's the first time I'd ever seen him. He did that. Yeah, there was some kind of Star Wars related birthday gift or Christmas
we had a
gift.
great time with him. I understand that too. You wanting to provide some time, but also people being like,
I can't really bump people. It's not like I'm in Denver and there's a Denver comic there. Vail's 100 miles away. People are driving at a minimum 100 miles, sometimes flying in. So I can't really say you got to do less time. It's kind of tough. Especially hours before the show. If it's like a week before the show, or
you can maybe have that conversation.
What's that?
Yeah, you could probably have that conversation a week before the show, but minutes before the show, I mean,
Yeah.
we experienced that the night I was there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, hey, the
exactly.
show's booked. I
Yeah.
can't just wiggle all this around, and
Yeah.
I don't blame you. I mean, I think it's not probably not the easiest thing to hear as the comic, but it's the
Right.
right thing to do as the showrunner, because these
It's kind of
people
a question mark if it is the right thing, because, for the audience, maybe it's better for them to see the fancy person, but I think in the long run, your reputation matters. And I need comics to trust me. And I'd be not a good producer for the comics in that
Well,
situation.
I agree with your statement. If I drove 5,600 miles to come do a set, and then you told me when I got there that I was supposed to do 25 or 30 or even 15, and you said I need you to do 7, and even if I'm still going to pay the same amount, but I need you. I would just be like, what the hell, dude? This is
Exactly.
I would be mad, or
Yeah.
I mean, I may not even be mad. I'd just be bummed.
Yeah. Yeah,
You gotta
exactly.
keep
And you don't
telling
want
me.
that. You need some
No,
good vibes in this business. So
right.
anyways, I want to be sensitive about your time. I really appreciate you.
Oh man, it's so great to see you again, Mark, and thanks for having me on. I'd
Yeah,
love to
I'll
do
tell
it
you one of
again.
my
Dig
one of my
deeper.
2025 goals is to get to New Orleans and see you in
Yeah,
person out there. So
yeah, come down.
yeah.
Make sure you reach out in advance to make sure I'm in town. So it'd
I'll
be
text you like 10 minutes before the show and I'll demand a spot. A lengthy one
okay.
too.
Sounds good. I'll also be in Vail in January, so we'll
Oh,
talk.
you will? The
Yeah.
MLK Day week by any chance?
I have to look at the date, but
We already, I mean, I've already had this problem where the shows are already overbooked. But anyways, reach out, and we got a nice note here from the internet, and we'll see everybody next week on Monday. And Matt, you have a terrific week. Merry Christmas to you and all that good
yeah,
stuff. Take
great.
care, everybody. Stick
Bye.
around for a second, Matt. Here,
Sure.
we'll end this.